Hey, what is going on, YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day here. And guys, we've got a fun one for you here in today's video. A first look at the Vampire 2. And there's a lot to talk about in this video, so let's get right into it. Starting off first here with our modifications. As always, aiming system mod 1. We are not running propulsion because it doesn't have propulsion in slot 2, so we're instead running steering gears, concealment in slot 3, and the legendary reload mod in slot 4. Now, there can be an argument made for taking range mod there in slot 4, as I think your base range is only like 11.1, 11.2, something like that. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the video. Moving on over to your loadout here, you do have access to HE and AP shells, as well as one quintuple torpedo rack. Now, this ship does have a good bit of consumables, as you can see here: the crawling smoke generator, the engine boost, and the medium range sonar, we will call it. It is a 4.4 detection of ships and a 3.1 detection of torpedoes. It is a 96-second consumable, and you do only get 2 of them. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the video. Moving on over to our specs here, the survivability is 24,190, and that is, of course, with Sims as an inspiration. Artillery, 3x2 113mm guns with an 11.1 range and a 2.3 base reload. The HE does have an 8% fire chance. As we mentioned, only one quintuple launcher there, 1x5. You do have a little bit longer range, and they do go, I believe, a little bit faster than the Daring's torpedoes, as well as doing a little bit more damage there at 19,500 with your max damage. AA defense is 52. Just don't get caught or focused by a carrier because it won't matter. Maneuverability is 35 knot top speed, 680 meter turning circle with a 3.8 rudder shift. However, the acceleration on this boat sort of kills a little bit of the maneuverability, in combination with not really being that fast. Now, your concealment is pretty good at a 5.4 there with a camo concealment module. And of course, look at me now in the second slot of the commander perk. Moving on over to your armor, you're basically just a tin can, as almost every destroyer in this game is, with 20 millimeters of plating pretty much everywhere. Reloader, sequential, and sticky shot here for the overview. And this is a beautiful looking ship, which is actually docked in Sydney, Australia, I believe, and is honestly a bucket list item for me to visit one day when I visit all of my Aussies in the upside down there. But anyway, moving on over to our commander here, Mr. Hector Waller here, crikey, who does have a main base trait of hard over heck here. And of course, we are running Observant Rage. Look at me now. I went ahead and went with Perceptive here in the third slot. You can really make an argument for any one of those perks here in the third slot, but Perceptive honestly just makes the most sense to me. In the fourth slot, though, we have Scrap Iron Flotilla, one of the new perks from Mr. Hector Waller here, which does increase main battery traverse speed per 1% HP lost, as well as decreasing incoming damage from shells, torpedoes, and bombs to your destroyer at 1% HP loss there. So a nice little sort of, the more the game goes on, the somewhat more effective you can become. I was running Steadfast Soldier for a good majority of these games, but I went ahead and switched it back to Unstoppable. I just can't get this perk to work, and this is probably a skill issue in this regard, as we show our inspirations of Eric Bay and William Sims here. This thing probably needs to be run as more of a purely focused gunboat at medium to long ranges there, which was why we mentioned having the range mod in slot 3 with mortar or stand or fall here. However, considering that you have a sonar and you are a decent cap contester with how strong the AP is on destroyers, I really like pressing the attack, getting the early destroyer either elimination or contest in there. However, considering you only have 2 sonar charges and your crawling smoke only goes at 1/4 speed, unless you can really catch the destroyer off guard or, use an island in the middle of the cap, if the enemy destroyer knows the traits of this ship, you're really not going to be catching that many of them. So then you're sort of forced, relinquished to just being a mid-range gunboat. And if you don't have the range mod, like I said, your max range is 11.2, 11.4 there, which puts you in the range of the Stalingrad radar and within 1 kilometer of most of the other radars at the tier. So this ship is certainly good. It's certainly effective. However, I just haven't quite got it to work the most effective to me. In terms of its perks, right? So maybe I just need to run full gunboat and sort of play the mid-range there and then, catch destroyers later in the game. But I really like getting this early advantage, which you guys will actually see in this game here. There's this island to the left. We are going on the left side of the Bravo cap here. And Mountain Range is probably one of the best maps for this ship. It's a rather open concept map with a bunch of islands sprinkled in the middle. And there's islands in every cap, so you can sort of navigate these caps with your crawling smoke and your sonar, getting between places without necessarily getting detected, and then sort of sneaking up on destroyers here as our Shima is leaving his flank. I will actually give a good bit of credit to the Shima, and I believe it was the Michelangelo. This game sort of comes down to the wire with me almost making a critical mistake at the end, but this was a fun game, so you guys should stay tuned till the end. But moving on here, we have the early cap contention. I went ahead and popped my sonar here. I wanted to play this aggressively. Looking at the enemy lineup, if I can get one of these early destroyer eliminations, it is just going to benefit my team really well. There's only 2 destroyers here, a good number of battleships, and a few cruisers. Anytime you can get an early cap and an early destroyer elimination, it really puts the pressure on the Reds to sort of make a move. And I feel like sometimes that's just what a lot of players don't understand, is the fact that once you get that elimination and you get that cap, the Reds are forced to come to you. And that is when we notice that a Gearing has decided to make his way right around this island, and he's coming in flat broadside. We pop our crawling smoke, we load the AP, and yeah, this is quite possibly the worst case scenario for this Gearing here. A huge amount of focus fire from my team. Like I said, I was actually genuinely surprised by some of the plays I saw, considering it was update week from this team here. However, there is a Kurfürst moving in the cap, so we're going to go ahead and safely crawl out of here at 9.3 knots. You can see the indicator there of the crawling smoke. You can only go 1/4 speed at this current pace in order not to outrun your smoke screen, which has honestly been a little bit of trouble for me. Considering the acceleration of the ship, I am constantly outrunning my smoke here, so I just need to pay attention to that. And as a player, when you get the ship, that is definitely something you need to pay attention to. Now, of course, Aaron being Aaron, missing torps there. You wouldn't think that a Kurfürst would YOLO rush the cap. Well, honestly, you might. I don't know. That being said, it was update week, so I wanted to put those torpedoes a little bit short. I had a question on that a few streams back. And the reason you put those torpedoes short is just in case that ship stops or turns out. Those torpedoes which would have missed in front of his boat are now hitting him directly. Unfortunately, this Kurfürst decided to sail in a straight line, which is just something logically I would never do, which is probably why I didn't expect it. But they are both in the cap here, so as soon as we get a fire on one of them there, we're going to go ahead and switch to the AP. And as you can see, we are getting a good number of shatters, but we're also getting a good few penetrations on the superstructure of his ship, which is just always a strategy you want to utilize. Once you get at least one fire or a fire in a different section, or you know that they're on a double fire, go ahead and switch to the AP and get those follow-up salvos without potentially triggering the fight fire with fire. But here we see that Kurfürst has put out his fire, so we're going to try and load him up on at least another single or potentially, hopefully, a double fire here. However, I've been trying to play this ship, this destroyer, very cautiously, considering that you only have 24,000 health and no heals, and we are smoked down. If we lose a good chunk of health, as I have in a lot of other games, you are really relinquished to being a torpedo boat, unless, of course, you get caught with your guns or your smoke screen comes back. And only having 5 torpedoes there you're not really going to be the most effective torpedo boat. But as you can see, simply by guns, the amount of DPM that you can do given the right set of circumstances, aka a GK sailing without really paying attention to where he's going, yeah, we've already racked up about 50,000 damage and a few fires here. Now, of course, fire chance is one of those things which I really think is never accurate in Legends. However, if you already have a ship on fire, go ahead and switch to the AP as we just aforementioned there. Getting those few AP penetrations while he is on fire is only going to essentially double up your damage. Now, at that range on the GK, I'm really only going to be penning the superstructure. However, on cruisers and especially on destroyers, as you saw with that gearing, this ship will absolutely fucking shred destroyers and light cruisers. Now, if you get caught by a light cruiser, you're probably going to blow up, so make sure your crawling smoke screen is activated or you have them in sort of a bad position. And speaking of bad positions, I wouldn't want to be the enemy ships over here on the alpha flank. My destroyer went down in a flaming heap of scrap metal in, what was it, 2 minutes there, and now they are basically relinquished to spot for themselves. Which is why it is so important as a destroyer that you don't give up your early advantages. And honestly, a good reason that this ship, I feel like, can be very strong. If you have decent concealment and you press the attack, as we mentioned earlier in this video, you get your crawling smoke going and your sonar, you can easily sort of catch destroyers who also want to cap contest. However, these two cruisers and battleship are actually doing the right thing here. They are pressing the attack instead of just hiding in the back, allowing me to get the cap. And here is sort of one of those situations that I was talking about. I was briefly detected outside of my smoke here, and I really can't just sort of sit here, only going, what, 9.3, 8.6 knots here in my destroyer. I'm going to be caught by the sonar of this Johan de Witt, or potentially rushed and torpedoed by this Zhao here. So I have to escape, and this is just sort of what I was talking about earlier. It's probably a skill issue on my part, not, paying attention to the right situations to use my smoke screen in. But when you use that crawling smoke, you are basically advertising where you are for the next minute, because your smoke screen is going to follow you, and of course you can outrun it, but by sort of paying attention to where the smoke screen goes, you will know where the destroyer is at all times. But there's a great example of getting the AP on sort of a cruiser there. Now, the Johan is not necessarily a light cruiser. However, we aimed for the upper belt and superstructure there and managed to get a beautiful set of penetrations and get the elimination there. But here the Zhao is pushing in, probably torpedoing, so we're going to go ahead and drop a few torpedoes on that section there. I wanted to drop those just in case that Navarine decided to back up, but I probably should have put them ahead of the island here. But we're going to try and get any sort of guns on target we can, getting a few defend ribbons in the process. But with that assist in fist there, we now have 4 fists and 1 elimination with 1 solo cap and 2 defends. So already, even though it's about halfway through, well, we're sort of nearing the end of this game, 6 minutes left, we have certainly done our job and shown the effectiveness of this ship. However, if you look at the other side of the map, it is now time for the update week teams to do what they are known best for, and that is throw. A huge shout out to, I believe it was a Shima, or I think it was actually the Michelangelo torpedo there, which connected on that Navarine, putting him on damage con. And if we can manage to connect 1 more fire, he will be hurting regardless. However, looking at how close the game is and the points are, we are really going to need to get this elimination and the cap here if we want any chance at winning. And that is when we notice that the defense goes down, and yeah, this game is not looking great in terms of overall ship advantages. The enemy definitely has the HP advantage. However, we also have the concealment and destroyer cap advantage here coming up. And that is actually when I noticed that the Shima was technically calling a play which I would consider a plus play. He's telling the Michelangelo to get back. We are going to need that Michelangelo and his DPM and HP in order to deal with these last 4 remaining ships. Now, of course, he does manage to connect a great salvo there and get himself the Confederate medal on that Navarine. However, he's going broadside again to get his guns and secondaries on target, even though a few of your secondaries are on the front. And he actually will manage to get the elimination in combination with our fire as we get the helping hand medal. However, I don't love the trade in terms of the health, because we're going to need it. As you can see, the enemy is now working their way into the Bravo cap. Also, given that the last cruiser that the enemy has is in Alaska with a 9-kilometer radar, this is not going to bode well for the combination of ships that the blue team, us, has remaining. A Michelangelo with half health there is not going to do very well against a Conqueror. I believe it was a Shimakaze. It definitely was a Shimakaze and an Alaska there. Now here I get a little bit greedy, I'm not going to lie. This Conqueror had some intelligence here as the Shima Torps are inbound. We pop our last crawling smoke here. I was trying to get the resets. However, we don't manage to get it there, and our Shima almost manages to throw the game in a good 2 seconds there as the torpedo goes right behind his boat. I could have popped the sonar here, however, I wanted to catch the enemy destroyer in his smoke with my sonar. However, the enemy actually plays this somewhat intelligently, and this is honestly a game that I rather enjoyed. The sort of cat and mouse game by both teams here. The enemy now has the cap and point advantage. However, as you will see here in just a moment, we work our way back into the cap and actually take the advantage back at the last second. So you guys let me know, did the enemy play it right in this situation? I mean, you could make an easy answer, obviously not, because we end up winning the game. However, I want to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on all of the plays that both teams make in these final minutes here. I also want you to take note of the Shima. He actually crossed my bow and almost coincidentally ate a torpedo. However, he is now setting up a little bit of a crossfire. By him going the direction that he did, he is spotting somewhat for the Michelangelo, as well as setting up this torpedo channel crossfire here. I've got my torps to the right here. He's got his torpedoes to the left. Now, I'm thinking in terms of, creating crossfires and such, and in the Shima brain, he's probably just thinking, must get torpedoes on target, and the only way he could do that on the Conqueror was by going in that direction. However, I do believe this guy was fairly intelligent. As you can see, he is actually backing up into the capture point now, as Aaron almost manages to take another Shima torpedo. That is when the Alaska decides to radar here, and I have no idea why he did that. He is behind this island for me, and the Shima here, so good on our teammates for not really putting themselves in position, to be shot at while simultaneously capturing the cap. And that is also when you'll notice we are actually capturing the cap. If the enemy just contests the cap, we lose. So I have no idea why they did what they did, but the threat of the Shima and my gunboat potentially working our way into the cap must have scared them off. But as you can see by the torpedo tracker of the Alaska here, he is now headed out to sea. Again, why, I have no idea. Maybe that was his last radar and he doesn't have a sonar available. Because if I'm the Alaska, I'm pushing my way around the edge of this island here. If the enemy gets one elimination or potentially one cap congestion or 20 to 30 seconds of it, we will most certainly lose this game. But with that assist and capture, we now have 1 solo cap, 2 assist and captures there, 5 assist ribbons, 1 kill, and 2 defends. So just an excellent overall game for us. And again, this is Aaron getting a little bit greedy as Shima torpedoes are on the way. Conquer manages to get his back turrets off. I do manage to stop and turn out as we connect a good permanent fire here. So not as greedy as I would have liked to see, but I probably could have waited about 2 seconds there before firing. Now, if I would have been permanently spotted, this would have been potentially a whole different story. But that, allows me to know that the Shima is in one of these openings here, as well as give me position of that Alaska. We do pop our sonar here in order not to take any torpedoes from that Shima, who keeps just spamming them wherever instead of, going into the cap and spotting here. And this is probably the part of the game where I'm going to give myself a little bit of a negative. We are catching up on points, and there's no reason for me to push this corner here. I'm turning into a Conqueror while simultaneously turning into Shima torpedoes. I stop instead of accelerating and almost completely throw the game. And that is sort of what I'm talking about with the acceleration. It is not great, but just make sure you're used to it and you don't eat a Shima torpedo, and you should be just fine. That is also another learning point as well. You don't want to lose a good majority of your health, at least try to in the early game, just in case you need, it comes down to a close finish like this, and you need to get or use a little bit of your HP rather. We do manage to connect a few torpedoes there, and the only reason I shot was because the Conqueror had just shot and there were only 20 seconds left. But if you're actually paying attention to the point swing, we went up at the last 2 to 3 seconds there. So a fantastic finish there. A GG's to all of the players there, the Michelangelo and the Shima. The Michelangelo for simply understanding that if you live, we win the fucking game. I can't tell you how insanely frustrating it is to see these just absolute brain dead players sail in the last minutes. And I will admit, right, I almost did that myself. However, we just didn't blindly sail in and open water gunboat for the last majority. We got the cap, we took shots behind islands, we got torpedoes on targets. The Michelangelo hid by that island, protecting himself from the right and only being able to be shot at by that angle on the left there, as well as our Shima, who also got the cap. So you can do, you can still get damage there in those situations without being a complete nupty and just sailing in blindly. So a huge shout out to those two players there for helping us get the win, and a great first look at the Vampire 2 here. Final thoughts on this ship. It is an absolute must-have. I really like it. I don't absolutely love it, if that makes sense. And I think it's probably due to my own personal skill issue with the mock-up of the consumables here, the crawling smoke, the limited sonar in terms of you only having 2, and the limited range. I believe it had a 5 km sonar range on PC, so why it's limited in Legends, I don't know, because most other stuff wasn't nerfed. Z52 was eventually nerfed, I think, but and the Gdansk radar, it just feels a little bit underwhelming in terms of that initial cap contesting. But that being said, if you can catch destroyers such as we did, this thing is really strong. If you can get that crawling smoke in the right set of circumstances, which I really didn't in a good majority of this game, then yeah, you can absolutely be abusing ships with both the HE and the AP, and even torpedoes if need be. So like I said, I probably need to play with my commander and just get good. As the faults of the ship that I'm notating here are not really faults, more so, like I said, just a simple skill issue from me there. But as you guys saw, the ship can certainly be effective. It's a great campaign ship, and the Admiralty backing being $10, certainly a ship I would highly recommend to most, if not all, players. But that's the video. I love you guys. Have a great day, man. I'm out. Peace.